Hi, and welcome to the Media Show on the Pod TV Network. I'm Nick Pellavito. I'll be your moderator for today's Food Fight. Today, we're going to be discussing the difference between hate speech and free speech. What is the line? Who draws the line? And who's in charge of this line? So with that, we're going to bring in somebody who can change my mind, who's also a FIDE chess master from San Francisco, California, the Honorable Jim Eade. Jim, maybe you can enlighten us on free speech versus hate speech. Who draws the line? What is the line? And with that, also from California, we're going to a Mega Society member, a gentleman who was a former writer for Jimmy Kimmel Live, Rick Rosner. Welcome to Free Speech and versus Hate Speech. And then from Canada, we're going to bring in the Honorable Sasha Starr, who also is in charge of modern investing and also the great show Ukraine, Russia, and China on the Pod TV network. And maybe he can help enlighten us on free speech and hate speech. So I'll start with Jim Eade, since you're next to me. How do you define free speech and hate speech, and what is the difference? So
yeah, thanks, Nick. I think that free speech has been pretty well litigated. What you can and cannot say. You can't, for example, defamation is something you cannot do. Child pornography is something. There's a lot of different things that come under, the famous one is you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. This has been pretty well litigated. But what we're talking about today is what constitutes hate speech. And if it isn't directly threatening or inciting people to directly cause harm to another, you're pretty much allowed to say whatever you want to say. But I have this feeling that, in London, they have Hyde Park where everybody can get up and talk about whatever they want. And then people get in front of them if they're interested in what they're saying, and people move on if they're not. And I think, we need Hyde Park in our cities, in all our cities, so that people can vent and say whatever they want to say. But most speech, even if we find it hateful, is legal.
Okay.
You have to be, it's hard to tell the difference between trolling and stochastic terrorism. If you go, especially on Twitter, but on every social medium, there are like dumb kids, like 8th graders saying terrible, terrible things because it's fun to break taboos. And then there are true psychos saying, kill all the Muslims, kill all the Jews, and who are somewhat serious in intent. And it's a whole stew and it's hard to tell, who's dangerous and who's just a young idiot.
But Rick, isn't part of the problem with hate speech the notion of, and I've said it before on other shows, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, and all along those lines. And the same thing can be said even around some things that are hateful, because there are definitely some things that we know are very hateful said about the Jewish community, the Latin American community, the African American community, and a number of other communities as well. But then there is part of what is being said that is based on a person's perceived facts or their perceived knowledge of the facts. I mentioned earlier on one of the shows, I think it was World Edition, that I had the pleasure of doing an interview that will air later once I get the copy from the people that I was interviewing, the people that are members of the Hebrew Israelites. And these are the folks that believe that they are the original Jews. They are amazingly folks that are of African-American descent and all along those lines. And they have some very separatist kind of views and some very anti-integration views as well. But I mean, part of what they are doing is they are taking the historical narrative as they understand it and put it in that context. And since I wasn't around, at least not that I'm aware of, 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, and all in that space, then some of those facts, I can't really argue if they claim that, for example, you have many people that would claim today, even to this day, because of the certain passages in the Bible, Jesus was of African-American descent, just like they'll claim that Beethoven was of Moorish descent and all along those lines. And Jim, and even you, Sasha, we weren't around then, so we don't know whether they were or aren't or leave that space, because there are passages in the Bible about wool like hair like wool, which is a reference to like a lot of African American texture of hair as well and everything. And some people could take that as being hateful and everything. So I guess my question is,
Well, but
how do you
those
define
people
what
don't
hate
sound
speech is?
dangerous. But the example of shouting fire in a crowded theater, we're all, thanks to social media, we are all in a crowded theater whenever we're awake now. And people are shouting BS all the time, and it makes people crazy, and it's hard to know what to. I hate seeing all the garbage on X, formerly Twitter. At the same time, I hated being pulled off of YouTube, and I know Nick hates it because we discuss stuff.
Hate speech actually has a definition, and adhering to that definition is what I would usually lean on. But I think because of the gray area where a lot of people, we get people in a position where they're saying, take for example, the fire in the theater, that's not hate speech, that's something else. Saying that a person, oh, you wear glasses, oh, you 4 eyes, that's not hate speech, that's something different. So hate speech technically has a definition. As a matter of fact, it says abusive or threatening speech or writing that expresses prejudice on the basis of ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, or similar groups. So it has an actual definition. We just tend to kind of throw everything together and say, because that.
Jacoby, by that definition, and I hear you, and I definitely agree with you, but by that definition, if we say that all Palestinians are evil, that would be technically hate speech. And we've definitely seen some of that kind of conversations, just like we said that when the pandemic took place, that everybody that was of Asian descent was part of the reason that we were going through this pandemic. And we heard that kind of conversations in a number of social media spaces and everything. And there were people that literally would make the argument that because it came from Wuhan, that it must be the fault of everybody that is Chinese. And we know that that is a ludicrous notion and everything, but that would be defined as hate speech.
Those two examples fall up under the definition of hate speech.
Go ahead, Sasha.
It's not the game of definitions, no. It's a case of good lawyers prosecuting any idiot who is saying that I have a freedom of speech, I'm a free man. Okay, first of all, you have to write a check for $25,000 to your lawyer who will defend you. Probably he will, maybe he won't even bother with it. He will take another $10,000, $15,000, whatever you still have in your bank account, and then he'll say, oh, you know, my friend, it's not so simple. Actually, they have some evidence. Well, we remember you were on that demonstration in university. What did you say? From the river to the sea? Oh, what did you mean by that? Oh, maybe you meant that there will be Arab state and there will be no Israel anymore. My friend, this is not a free speech. This is a hateful propaganda. Well, you know what? I will try to settle it for maybe $100,000, but because a lawsuit for $1 million. So for $100,000, how you feel about it? I don't have any money. You know what the interesting thing is that most anti-Semites, they hate when their pocketbook is being hit. So the best way to deal with the anti-Semites is hit their pocketbook for $100,000 or maybe a little more, a little less here and there. This teaches you incredible lesson about freedom of speech and all this garbage of freedom of demonstrations and so on. You becoming so enlightened, and you will teach your kids and your grandkids and so on. And you know what? We will, as a result, we will be living in much better world.
Yeah, I would say that we're crossing the line between hateful speech and free speech, because there's a lot of speech that we can agree or disagree upon, which is hateful, and but are you free to say it? And the answer in many cases is yes. Unfortunately, it's true. We can say hateful things and get away with it. We can't incite people to commit violence. You know, the real where the rubber meets the road was President Trump inciting an overturn of the election. And did he get away with it because he said be peaceful? This is the kind of thing but it's well litigated what you can and cannot say. And sometimes, we have to have new litigation to determine exactly where this particular part of the speech comes from and whether or not it's something that you can get damages for. Like if you're trying to harm someone's reputation by saying a falsehood about them, that you can collect damages for. Not necessarily always, not necessarily successful, and it will cost you money to collect the damages, but that's part of what is protected. You're protected from someone defaming you. However, you're not protected from saying, I'm an Irish, my heritage is Irish, and if you call me a Mick, you can say that. You call me Patty, you can say that. It's free. You're free to say that. Go ahead, Jacoby. Oh, you're muted.
You're on mute.
I was just going to add in also the fact, not only what you're talking about with the gray area between the hateful, where we're mixing that up, we're also mixing up freedom of speech itself, because we forget that we can say whatever we want, but we're not free from the consequences. And that's what people tend to forget, is that you can say what you want to, but that doesn't mean that I can't say what I want to after you, or that, if somebody were to get upset, that doesn't protect you from the consequences from your speech.
The one that I'm confused about, Jacoby, on what you're saying is the fighting words, because that's in the definition. So what's fighting words?
Well, what about Rudy Giuliani and his free speech? What happened to that?
Oh,
Rudy Giuliani, he basically
someone's reputation by lying about them.
Yes.
Oh, so you can't lie? Is that what you're saying?
You can't lie or commit harm. Yeah.
Well, what about all the people who are being fired or resigning at the universities based on, I guess, something they've said recently? I mean, it just seems like there's a lot of people saying things that maybe they shouldn't say things, but also things that are taken a little too out of context or too serious. And everyone is suing everyone for saying something or, making somebody step down. Right.
Or in this case, the University of Pennsylvania professor not saying something, resigning. Right. Okay. So are you?
The Harvard president didn't resign, though.
I know the Harvard president didn't resign, but the University of Pennsylvania president did resign for not saying something as opposed to saying something. So do we have now
we're mixing up stuff. We're mixing up reputation.
Well, do we have a different standard now that you could be held guilty for not denouncing?
They weren't held guilty. They were only held guilty by their own internal mechanisms, the university mechanisms.
Right, exactly.
They weren't tried in a court of law. Come on.
I want to be the coach at Texas A&M contract. I want to have that. I mean, come on. They pay to fire him. They pay him $75 million, right?
I know.
What did he do? What did he do?
He didn't win football games. It's very important.
Is that a freedom of something?
That's capitalism.
If he gets paid $75 million, which he's going to get for
losing,
for doing nothing. All he has to do is do nothing. All he's going to do is collect $7.5 million a year for the next 10 years. And all he has to do, Jimbo Fisher doesn't have to do anything.
Well, not 7.5, 75 million.
Think about this though.
Think about how elected to Congress is.
People are more upset, like how Nick, you just pointed out, the University of Pennsylvania person who had to resign because of internal pressures. They're not getting paid. Jimbo Fisher was horrible at his job, got fired, and they're still paying him, but there's no outrage.
No. So here's what I think. I think that there's an underlining story with Jimbo, and we're going to find out in a couple of years that he violated somebody's rights or did something wrong, because they're paying him to fire him.
Hey,
They're-
Jim
they're-
Jordan is in
And
Congress.
I think they don't want the story to get out right now. It'll come out in a couple of years. We'll find out the truth. You know, maybe he sexually harassed somebody or sexually assaulted somebody, and you know he's getting paid. But I think that there's a backstory there, because you just don't pay somebody $75 million to fire them because they did a bad job. I mean, come on.
Go ahead, Rick.
There's a frustrating little game you can play on Twitter to educate yourself about what Twitter thinks is hate speech. You go on there, you use the search function. You can search for gays, blacks, Jews, Muslims, and it'll give you a bunch of tweets. And some of those tweets will be some horrible person saying some horrible thing. And then you can report them. And then Twitter gives you a form where you check all these boxes. What do you think is hate speech about this? And then you fill in the boxes, and then you submit your report. And then a day later, Twitter sends you a report as to whether they agree with you or not.
The wild thing about Twitter, though, think about this:
It's a
the
bot.
Elon Musk super freedom of speech guy.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
say something about one of his companies.
Pause.
Say something about him.
Speech over. Oh, Jatovi, you hit the nail on the dollar. I mean, you know, freedom of speech ends when the dollar is at stake.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised with that. And for some reason, our network keeps getting banned on Facebook. At least every time I try to broadcast through mine, I've been broadcasting through Kim's because I got banned twice. They don't like our programs or whatever we're doing. And so I have to broadcast through Kim right now,
Well,
because every time I broadcast,
Anytime,
Facebook goes
anytime we reach more views than Fox will report that we've done something wrong and then take us down.
yeah,
And so Nick's been put in jail too many times, so we're using me. But I fire back. Nick doesn't. I appeal back really hard and make them prove that we did something wrong. It takes time, it takes energy, but I've won a few of my appeals. But do they give me back any of my space, my time, or money for it? No. So Fox and CNN both have fear of people like us. They do this to other people. It's not just us. I've taken photos of other people in podcasting world that have been like outdoing Fox. And they've literally cut them out completely. You know, people who've had hundreds of thousands of fans, delete them. And when you delete that many fans, you can't get it back.
It's the dark
Nick
side of
knows.
capitalism.
Nick, you lost like 20,000.
yeah, something like
Something
that. on
stupid
Facebook.
like that. I mean, and all because they didn't give Nick a chance to appeal. Like they just cut him. And he didn't do anything wrong. He literally did not do anything wrong.
LinkedIn does allow us to broadcast. They've been broadcasting
Yeah,
them
they
for
do.
years, and they've been really good. However, I will tell you this: we've had people comment on that to our panelists. They say, "Be very careful what you guys say, because a lot of people are watching the show."
Mm-hmm.
That's what was the comment from LinkedIn. Just let you know, they didn't say anything specific. I'm just saying.
Speaking of which, there have been a couple of statistical things that are very interesting, and one of them, actually, I had the pleasure of being part of yesterday and everything. But I'd love to hear Jatovi's thoughts, because y'all are talking about statistics and all along those lines. But I did see that Netflix is giving viewing statistics for nearly all of their titles and everything. And I think I mentioned on the news show at the beginning that there is a film that's very popular, and it came out for season 1 about a lawman that some people say is the basis of the Lone Ranger. There was an African American lawmaker and all in that space, that being Bass Reeves. So Lawman Bass Reeves debuted in its first episode to 3.34 million viewers, and it's already set a record on Paramount Plus with like 7.5 million viewers across the world in their first 7 days, and that was before last night's closeout of their season 1. So there's talk of them having a season 2 and a season 3 as well. So just wondering, so folks' thoughts about these kind of numbers that we are seeing, where folks are wanting to see fresh content, whatever that fresh content is, but I also want to see the analysis of the content that they are getting.
Releasing numbers is a big thing. Look at HBO. HBO used to do that, and they still do that. I mean, heck, Game of Thrones, Lovecraft Country, Watchmen, all the different shows that they put out, they had released the numbers. Hey, that's where you get money. If you can prove that these are pulling in dollars, you get money. And honestly, when they had cut back on a lot of stuff from taking big chances, and that's one thing that hit HBO and Cinemax and all the other stuff when they started merging. And so a lot of companies, I mean, Rick can probably talk more about how the companies are cutting back and not taking as many chances as they used to, because money's money. Money, gotta pay the bills.
Money's not money if you don't release the numbers. Without the numbers, there's no accountability. And for a while, the Netflix and the other streamers were throwing tens of billions at productions, hoping to own the streaming world, particularly Netflix. And then all these other streamers came along. Netflix saw that it couldn't prevail. It couldn't build a moat. So it cut back. But without accountability, like you said, Lovecraft Country, good show, only got one season. And they if they don't release the numbers, they can say, yeah, well, it just didn't, meet our what levels, but then they don't say what levels there are.
Just to let you know about numbers, this is why I interject here. Most of the viewers on Pod TV actually watch us on their mobile phone. So this month there's
we get to see this.
We
Yeah.
get to see this. There's about 34,000 people who watch us on mobile phone. 22,000 watch on the desktop. But we have our own TV channel on Roku, which anybody can go to, type in Pod TV. We don't have 1,000 viewers on Roku, which is really weird because we have 3 TV channels on Roku. Yep,
But here's the thing. We see them just as much as they see us. But Nick and I got to meet the people from Nielsen ratings. And I don't know if you remember that, but they were the ones who drove people's numbers and provided the data so that people could get advertising and things like that for years. I wonder how they're doing now, because everybody goes to their own numbers now.
They've pretty much fallen apart as far as I know. I mean, when there were 3 broadcast networks, it was pretty straightforward.
Right.
But then then the 80s and the 90s happened, and then Nielsen had to keep changing its metrics because advertisers care, logically, about how many people are actually watching their advertisements. And Nielsen had to keep adjusting how they measured people to reflect that. And they still did a bad job, but it led to all sorts of weird program structures where you made like the intros to shows now. The Rockford Files had a minute-long theme song, maybe longer, because people would put up with it. Now shows have a 3-second intro. It could even be Lost just had a noise, and to capture viewers, some shows would throw on a 30-second first act and then move into 8 minutes of commercials to capture the viewer. Other shows, like late night shows in particular, but also news shows, saw that as soon as you run ads, you lose a bunch of viewers. So they'll run a huge long first act. Maddow will talk for 24 minutes before going to break.
No doubt about that. Hey, Nick and Kim, I got a question for you, because you brought up Mother Jones. I think it was you, Nick, recently, and apparently they're in talks to merge with the Center for Investigative Reporting, and I definitely mentioned Paramount and some others that have merged as well. So my question to you, since it's the media show, is: are we getting any calls yet to get bought out and everything? I need a bigger check and everything. So I want to know if Pod TV is getting any threats to be bought out and all along those lines.
Well, wait, time out. See, here's the real problem. Okay, first of all, the advertisers, because I watch ESPN Sports Center. Do you know I watch more ads because we're going to go to break and they'll show you 4 minutes, 5 minutes of ads before you watch another thing on SportsCenter. It gets really boring because
That's why I record it.
What?
I record everything.
Yeah,
You know, so I can fast forward through the ads.
You're right. You have to fast forward
And
everything.
fast forward, no more real time.
If you don't do that, you're spending
Yeah.
all your time.
If
watching
you
that.
watch the evening news on like ABC towards the end of the show, they'll come back, they'll do a 30 to 45 second story and then go right back to ads. So it's about
it's horrible.
6 minutes of ads.
But I got a
and
question
45
for you because we talked about accountability. And Nick,
Yeah.
you just said, so many thousands of people are watching on the phones. Well, how
Right.
do I know that the number you told me was true?
Okay, because we have a
We
source
have a
called
data collection.
Vimeo. Okay, Vimeo is the only place that Vimeo and LinkedIn give us data. Okay, and if you need to look at data on your shows, as long as they're routed through Vimeo, Vimeo will come back and tell us what the viewership was. Last year, our viewership total was 2.4 million viewers, but per show it may be 5,000 to 10,000 per
Right.
show, and some less. You say,
Not bad.
but not bad. But if you run 40 shows like we do a week, 30 or 40 new shows, that's only like 10,000 a show. You have 300,000 people watching in a month. I mean, so it's not that hard to aggregate and get that. But if you want data, see, I don't know how many of your shows go through the Vimeo system because I've seen your shows, Jim. If they go through Vimeo, send it to Mark. Mark puts it through Vimeo.
They do.
Vimeo distributes it. Then we'll get the data back. If you distribute yourself, which you can do, we don't
We
get
don't
the
get
data.
it.
So I don't know, you know. And
But if you
so
use the Vimeo link and distribute using the Vimeo link, what's nice about that is Vimeo also promotes our shows and sends them out as well. But if you use that Vimeo link, then we get full accounting of what your distribution is and how many people and how. Because Vimeo calculates whether they watched it on the mobile or on the computer,
Right.
whether it was in Washington
So
or
Vimeo's the new Nielsen.
Vimeo is the new Nielsen. You're right. Vimeo
Yeah.
actually gives us the best analytics, but
Yeah.
sometimes Kim and Mark will get mad at me because I'll run direct through LinkedIn because I love to do that. And LinkedIn will give me their own demographics, which is totally separate than Vimeo and frankly not as good as Vimeo. Vimeo actually has the best demographics. Also, what it does, Jim, it will tell us which country has actually watched the shows,
But,
okay, and how many people. And for years, the number one country is the United States. Okay, we get 2 million of the 2.4 million from the US. Number two has been Brazil. Our number two viewership has been Brazil for a long time, and don't ask me why. And then small amounts all the way down. Now, this is Vimeo's demographics, and your show has to go through Vimeo. Otherwise, I don't collect the data.
So
Well, Nick,
here's
this
one
is a
more thing.
topic.
I want to add something very important about this. You're not just distributing out of Vimeo. We have the link set up. If you give them to us, that we can distribute from Vimeo to almost anywhere. So from Vimeo, we go to Roku, we go to Amazon, we go to our personal Facebooks, YouTubes. So if people then watch it, or to yours, but we have to go from Vimeo out, then when people watch on your Facebook, you get credit for it on Facebook and we get credit for it on Vimeo. But if you're going straight to Facebook, we don't get any credit for it, just you do. So that's why we've been forcing everybody to go through Vimeo, so that and we're not cutting you out. We're not cutting any of the producers out. We're actually giving you more views because now you can go to other places.
Kim, how do they mechanically do it? Because I know that
I have no idea.
that Jim has this show, Change My Mind, okay? And I've seen it occasionally, but I don't see it on our Vimeo. How does he get Change My Mind through our Vimeo thing? I don't know. How he does it.
It has to go into our Vimeo, and then we link it to his Facebook, or we give him the link. So we can give you the link, and then you can post it on your Facebook as well.
So is it Mark's fault?
No, to answer your question,
Yeah,
it goes
everything's
directly
Mark's fault.
because it goes directly to the
Him and I
web
make
live, which
mistakes
it goes
all month.
directly to the web live, which goes to the Vimeo and everything, and it also goes to LinkedIn as well as Twitter. And right now
Yeah,
they
it goes
just added,
everywhere. We
and
have
right
it
now they just
covered.
added, which I've been experimenting with. I haven't tried it today and everything, but I did try it on actually the chat show. I know Sasha was here earlier, but they are airing. You can also go to Instagram Live now as well. So they added that, and I've been playing around with that a little bit also.
Are you able to sell advertising via Vimeo? Do advertisers come to you?
No, they don't. Advertising is a whole different ball game in terms of it's a metric we haven't really figured out as to how you get the advertisers, Rick. In other words, and even the NAPD conference, they don't focus on advertising. All they're doing is trying to sell and resell content. But what I've seen on advertising, apparently the industry that advertises the most is the drug industry. Believe it or not, they're heavy into pushing drugs. They're big pharmaceuticals. Yeah, I shouldn't say drugs, but
Yeah.
But remember,
Legal drugs.
Advertisers won't come unless you have the data that supports the viewership.
Right.
Okay. And you can't get the data if you send it direct. So I make the mistake a lot because I like to get the things out. I send a lot direct to LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and Twitch. Not Facebook. I sent it to Kim's Facebook because mine's shut down permanently. But the thing is, if you want to get the data captured, you've got to go through Vimeo and talk to Mark or Kim because I don't know how to do it. I've never been able to figure that.
So Mark, we already programmed a bunch. So already when we send it to Vimeo, it redistributes out to all these other places. So it's not like it's just not going to Facebooks and stuff like that. And you could grab that link from Mark's Facebook or Nick's Facebook. Well, not anymore Nick's, but mine. I don't know why they hate me too because they've tried to take me down. But you get those links, or Mark can just send out the Vimeo link to everyone and just say, okay, take this and copy it to your Facebook. But what that does is every time you get a hit for it, we also get an accounting for it, and that helps you. You can put it on your YouTube, I think, as well.
Yeah, because and you really should do it because I don't see either one of your shows on our Vimeo account, and our Vimeo will also, what it does, it'll also rank the shows who gets the most views of the entire network. So you got to get with Mark and get the link so that it gets routed through Vimeo, and then Vimeo will give us the data in terms. And I can tell you how many people watched your shows and from what country they watched it and from what device they watched it. And you're right, Rick. Vimeo is the new Nielsen. Nielsen is dead.
What should our objectives be? Like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I have a vague idea that if enough people see me yammering, that maybe I'll get a book deal at some point, but I really don't.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. I thought about that, because I have different motives to do this. It's mainly because I'm bored doing what I do for a living, which sucks. Setting up pensions is not really exciting, but here's the thing. If you look at Taylor Swift, I'm going to beat on Taylor Swift. What she did is she was the ultimate shameless self-promoter, and the ability to scale through media is incredible. In other words, to scale yourself. There's no other way you can do it except through media. Now she figured it out, the magic formula, and she scaled herself through media. And apparently she went off like a rocket with this last Eras tour, where she's pulling in $4 billion. Well, if you look at the media right now, because there is access, most of your access is shut off. ABC, NBC, CBS, forget it. All the majors shut you off, so it's impossible. PBS, impossible. So what's the new access to media? It's through streaming media, which what we're doing. So if you have a talent, and I don't care what it is, the best way to scale it today is through the media. Now, once you scale it at a certain level, then theoretically it should be monetized, but you also have to have the metrics to back that scale. Now it was pretty expensive to buy 3 channels on Roku. So I've got 3 channels, not just 1, 3. Every time I pop it up, I press the button. We got 3 Roku channels. Now, so we have plenty of spaces to distribute through television, but we only have 1,000 people watching on TV.
But Nick, just to clarify those three channels, just for folks that are listening and are not always on Roku, the main programming goes to the main Pod TV Live and all along those lines. And as we were talking about earlier, when we were talking about sports, there are lectures. The place that I am currently actively working at, they pretty much give me permission, as have a couple of universities that are locally based and some that are even outside of the area. And I'm working on some that are even international, that we can air their lectures, including some people that have been passed on the show. So that is the one that is called Live and Events. So it's a combination of sports and literally lectures. They're not even lectures always of people that I agree with, because I get lectures from both the right and the left and different other folks and all along those lines. And then the third one is World Politics, which is a re-air of some of the political shows and political lectures and all in that space. So that is the way that the three are put out there now and everything. And this is actually something I was going to ask Jacoby about, because it's something that he's involved in and everything. But as I just said earlier, yesterday we did a red carpet event for the Bass Reef special and everything. And there were two podcasting networks that were literally here. And I know of one that's in Atlanta called the Atlanta Cast Network. There is the All Bull Network, which is here in Durham, North Carolina. And there is also the young lady who was with a thing called Black Fly on the Wall. And I think they may have their own network as well. So as one that studies the market, because Jacoby, I know you study the market and everything, what is your thoughts about this proliferation of networks? Because Pod TV is just one of them, but there are several as well. I just wonder your thoughts around this proliferation of networks, because literally I just met the All Bull Network yesterday, and I knew of Atlanta Cast because of some things that were going on within our own network, and people decided that was a better opportunity for them. But I was just wondering your take on the proliferation of these networks popping up.
I mean, the canary in the coal mine was back with gaming and porn. Rick brings up porn all the time because of how it was controlled by one or two groups. But now once that decentralized, everywhere, anybody with a camera phone can do the same thing. Gaming, when Twitch came online and really started helping out the gamers, show their games off. Same thing with YouTube. That's why YouTube jumped in the game. That's why Facebook jumped in the game. That's why TikTok has a gaming section everywhere.
Yeah.
When those kicked off and showed that you can create your own channel, and you can sell your own ads, and they can sell ads on top of it, and you can make a ton of money. Because, for example, Nick, I hate to push back on the Taylor Swift thing. Taylor Swift had talent, and there was other things. It wasn't her YouTube sensation you have tons of gamers. There's a guy, his name is Dr. Disrespect. That's how he became. But the funny thing is, they've made, he's got to deal with different game developers because he's made his own video game. He's got to deal with different PC makers because he made a PC after his name. A guy named Ninja. Everybody's heard about Ninja. Well, he got to deal with Samsung. He had a halftime commercial at the Super Bowl. These are the people that blew up based off of just your YouTubes, your social media platforms, and pushing it out there. And that's the way you go out, and that's where those channels come into play. There's one lady, Arrow Math, I think that's what she goes off of. A lot of people, she was a gamer. Then she started getting into the hot tub gaming. Then she started her own little channel. Beautiful young lady, smart and intelligent, created her own business and created her own channel off of it, created her own business. There's a lady who goes by Pokemon. She pays her staff $60,000 a year. People don't realize that she has a whole staff.
Yeah.
She actually would go to different channels and give away $15,000 just for up and coming streamers. Well, she got with some of her buddies. They created their own channel and their own Roku division and stuff. So yeah,
and we have an example in the chess world. Grandmaster Nakamura. You used to have to wait until you got invited to tournaments and try to win a prize fund. Nakamura started his own Twitch channel, and he's making so much more money through that than he ever could in prize fund. So, now he's like, yeah, I might play, I might not, because I make more money when I don't play than when I do.
And like there's a kid, there's actually a little kid, and he has toys now that's been out there for a couple of years. Ryan's World. There's also JoJo Siwa. There are toys out there. They are social media people who blew up. And
Right.
heck, Honey Boo Boo.
Honey Boo.
Mr. Beast, you know Mr. Beast.
Yeah, Mr. Beast.
Mr. Beast.
He lives in the
he has-
North Carolina area, and
Yep.
he's made off his YouTube channel $50 million. I mean, the thing is, that's what I'm saying. There's a book called Think and Grow Rich, right? If you read that book, the media right now is think and grow rich. The only question is, you got to think and grow rich, and then how do you do it? But has it been done before? Yes. And is it being done right now? Yes.
Yeah.
But it's all based on metrics of getting views. Now, our problem.
Hold on
is
real quick, Nick.
talk
Let me
shows
just
are
say,
long. Talk
Nick.
shows like we do are long. A lot of
just
their
want to put out there real quick. Just
Yeah.
want to put out there because you mentioned Mr. Beast and you said the $50 million, and you just said YouTube. You know that man's net worth is $500 million.
yeah, right. Yeah, because the thing is, he has the continuous income stream through his YouTube channel. So he's
Oh,
a
and you know,
YouTube is very.
Go ahead, Rick.
You don't do well. on
Is-
YouTube.
Is Pod TV's viewership on the upswing?
No, I'm glad you asked, and the answer is no. It's on the downswing. We dropped from 2.4 million down to 1.9 million viewers last year. At least that's the latest data I got from Vimeo. I don't get all the data though, realize, because a lot of people don't run their channels through Vimeo, so I don't know. Number one. Number two, if you redistribute, and redistributing means Facebook has groups, you send it to the groups. So like chess, when the chess show comes out, I send it to LinkedIn, and there are a bunch of people who watch, they comment. One guy even said, yeah, I should. And then chess has two groups, chess business group and chess group. You redistribute through those groups. The problem is we don't get the data back. So the one real problem that we're always fighting is, how do you get the data back to show the viewership on these things? So it's still, remember, this industry, I think streaming is an infant industry. What we're doing is in its early stages. But if you have the horizon, you go out 10 years from now, then it's a whole different cap for those people.
But speaking of which, one of the shows that we have that fits into this notion of what is popular, and y'all kind of alluded to it, Jacoby did earlier as well, is the notion of salacious content. And even though nobody's really, at least nobody that I'm aware of, except for maybe his wife trying to look at him in that space and everything, but I do know that folks love the title Naked at Night and all in that space, and that's probably the closest that we have to anything that is salacious and all along those lines. But this is, Rick, you'll enjoy this one, because apparently OpenAI just recently announced their interim CEO, and apparently he's in all kinds of trouble because they just found a new leader after the co-founder Sam Altman left or was ousted on Friday. But now they're finding out stuff, speaking about social media, because apparently he has been involved in discussions about rape fantasy statistics, sex and power, and The Game, a controversial pickup archery book that literally popularized tactics like negging. I have no idea what negging is, and the cube technique. So on the platform X, formerly known as Twitter, this fairly young man, 40 years old, frequently mused at length about dating and how to pick up women. So receiving
Negging
attention
is the
from an
technique
attractive-
where you go up to a beautiful woman and you kind of insult her, which is supposed to confuse her because she never gets insulted because she's beautiful, and that's supposed to be your way in. It's
Playing
all
hard to
part of-
get.
Okay, because apparently
They
he
like
said
me
receiving
because I
attention-
don't like them.
Yeah, he said receiving attention from an attractive woman, even if ultimately the date goes nowhere, is generally positive utility for a man, he wrote last June in response to a now deleted tweet. So there's an asymmetric payoff for the date itself. Most women are interested only if it will lead to a relationship eventually. Men are more willing to match, more willing to go on first dates, more willing to have casual sex, etc., because of the quote unquote payoff matrix. So apparently that's who the new leader of AI is. And apparently he wrote this book, The Game, Penetrating the Secret Society of Pickup Artists. So I guess if you want to be a pickup artist, you need to get this copy of this book and all along the line.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
women are
there's a lot
smart
of
enough to
terrible
catch
stuff
on.
about pickup artistry, but it also reflects like sociobiology,
Yeah.
sperm cheap, eggs expensive, that women are going to protect themselves sexually more than guys are.
Well, my thinking of Facebook, when I'm watching it, they move toward Reels, which is they have very quick data. And it's just like this. The reason why,
Instagram did that too.
yeah, the reason why we don't do too well on YouTube, the average time people watch YouTube is like 2 or 3 minutes, and it's going down. When the data of our shows, the average viewer will spend 17 minutes on our shows, but we have long content, so we have less viewers, but they spend a lot more time on our content than they do on YouTube. So we don't really fit well in YouTube because they're looking for really 2 or 3 minutes. And I don't know anybody who in our network who produces a 2-minute show.
It's really the
we have
TikTok
no
phenomena.
2-minute shows.
The TikTok phenomenon is really what's taken off.
Yeah, you get more viewers, but it's going to be for a very short period of time, Jim. In other words, you get a lot. And a lot of it,
Pod TV doing anything to increase awareness?
Well, realize mainly the thing is it's through our distribution partners. In other words, the people that we work with, they actually will end up sending it out. I'll give you an idea. Somebody you guys don't see very often, Rex Lee, has Cyber Talk, right? And Mark knows he complained because we are at capacity when it comes to storage right now on Vimeo. We have like 7 trillion bytes all plugged with shows, over 3,000 hours sitting on Vimeo, like no kidding. So apparently 20 of his shows were deleted. I don't know if I did it, Mark did, or Kim did. And he lost over 100,000 viewers. He got mad at us because he goes, I've got somebody who wants to buy and sponsor my whole thing, because he's got close to 1 million viewers right now on Cyber Talk. If you have a chance, go look at his show, Cyber Talk, you'll see. Good quality show. It doesn't surprise me he's moving up in the world. And he actually spent a lot of time, effort, and energy to push the quality of the show on Cyber Talk and also push his own distribution platform. If you have a chance, go look at Cyber Talk and you'll see it's totally different than what we produce. And he runs on our network, Rex Lee. But anyway, yeah, I got an email from Matt. Mark got copied too. What happened to 100,000 views we just erased on Vimeo? Mm-hmm. We have a storage problem. We're going to have to address it next year in 2024. Last I heard, it's going to cost us $17,000 just to add more storage to our network because we're at capacity.
And to answer your question, and I think it was yours, Rick, what I have found, and actually I will actually commend one of Sasha's folks and all along those lines, is that Ken does a really good job of putting out the information, even if we do a pre-record. So he helps with the marketing. So some of the people that do that are very good. I know that even on some of the shows that I have done, one of the things that guests will ask me is if they can repurpose it, reshare it, and I always encourage them to do it. They send me nice little emails about how much they enjoyed the interviews, whether we like them or not. I even got a nice one. I know it wasn't a fan of everybody here on the network, but I even got a nice little note from the Gregorian nuns and a number of others. So sometimes they will do their own helping with the publicity, and that is something that I try to encourage as well. And I'll say that Rick, your folks do a good job of that as well. So getting that word out and repurposing it is the strongest way to get the numbers up, because that's something that I've seen a number of folks do, including some of my guests, because they'll call me and ask me or email me, and I'll say, hey, send it out as many times as you want to, and as many choices as you want, including sources that I don't have. So like I said, I know that Ken Regan, not just Ken, but also Sasha himself, does a good job.
Yeah, but whatever I do, you can't see. It doesn't get reflected. Because because your stuff is going to, that's where Ken was wrong. It is going to Roku and everything else. It's a newer show, so some of those numbers aren't as strong as they used to be. But I have seen some of your shows actually do quite well based on the interviews that they were. The interview you did around Israel actually picked up some good numbers, as well as some of the other shows. So that is a newer show. So in that sense, Ken I meant, Mark, when I promote it, how do you see it? You know? like if I send my links to various people I put it on Facebook, you won't see that.
That's true. I will not see that. And I won't even see Ken's stuff as well. So that is correct. I won't see that because it doesn't come back to the Vimeos, which is what Ken was saying.
We never capture all the data. So like I said, the known data that we caught was 2.4 million. Probably there's more, Jim. We just don't know how much more, because if you do redistribution or somebody takes and puts it on somewhere else or repost it, we don't get that data.
Right.
So, but again, I can't go to an advertiser and say, well, we think we got it.
Yeah. No.
And that's the reason that I can go to Vimeo and I can say, okay, this show had this many views. It had this many through the desktop, mobile, and through Roku. And right now, I think it's mobile leads us. People are watching us on the cell phones the most, then desktop, and then the TV show is actually the TV thing, which is the most expensive thing to have.
Right.
Actually, the least.
Right.
And we have three.
Very interesting.
On Roku. By the way, I have plenty of space on Roku to
Yeah.
Okay, it's live. It goes through, this is live. It's going through Roku right now, and I got 2 more channels. I could run 3 right now. I don't have storage space. I mean, Vimeo work at capacity. So if I got to store and reshow it, I'm at capacity. Sasha.
Okay, I'd like to mention something. I do send links to YouTube, to my mailing list, to Facebook, and it works because of simplicity. That people, they don't care whether we have reports or anything like this. They need a simplicity to press the link, and here is the show. And most of the shows they watch in their free time, in the evenings and on holidays. And sometimes people tell me about comments about my show, which was aired 2 weeks ago. So for 2 weeks they had link, but they didn't touch that link until 2 weeks later. Why? I don't know. Maybe they're so busy, because I have no idea. So what's important is that once someone asked how, because I had some interesting program on World Addiction. So on World Addiction, I don't have YouTube link. So people asked me about the show, and I didn't have YouTube link. So I advised them to find it on podtv.tv. And I decided to try myself how easy I can find it. It's impossible to find it on podtv.tv. It is impossible, simply because you have a bunch of shows. Some of the shows are a year and a half old. Some of the shows are 3.5 months old, and so on. And they're not systematic. They're not in any order, whether alphabetical order or chronological order, or just.
I can't find my shows there. Yeah.
I cannot find some of my shows too. So if I have a YouTube link, this is reliable, and people can see it, find it. They can ask me to send link once again, because maybe they lost it or they have too many emails. So I can, most of the times, I can send link again, so they will see it. I am not so sure about how Vimeo works. How simple is that? Most people just don't use Vimeo. I'm one of them. I just don't
me either.
Vimeo. So I would question what's behind it, how easy.
As Kim just put out, you can find it on Pod TV shows. I think that's the main one that is used on YouTube, and that has all the shows. I do like what Rick has done, and that is, I know we have some of the shows that are showcased and have been showcased through the network itself, but because of the limitations, and I think that's what Nick was referring to, it's not all the shows, because like he said, it's about 35 or 40 are not showcased right now. I think one of mine is, Rex's is, and there might be 2 or 3 others, including the narrative show around storytelling that Evan was doing. I had to remember his name. Evan was doing, and all in that space. But there has been talk about everybody having their shows in that space. But even independently, Rick and his crew did that themselves. So I send them the Vimeo link, and they have their crew that has literally put together a showcase that they market themselves and all along those lines. So that's something that some people are doing if they have that kind of initiative. Because I know that Rick and Lance and is it JT?
Yeah, JD.
it
I don't
JT?
do anything. I'm lazy as
JD.
hell. It must be Lance and JD who are doing something.
Right. And also you're a tech guy because you have a web designer that is helping y'all as well. But he's
Oh, yeah,
the one
yeah,
that wants
he's
us
really
to
good. Adam, yeah, he's excellent.
Adam, right?
Sasha, just to let you know, Vimeo has 287 million viewers on view, but they're not as big as YouTube, which has about 2 billion.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's not the numbers. I'm not worried about
But-
the numbers. What I'm worried about the simplicity and easy to use YouTube versus Vimeo. Now, however, I don't sound 100% right. I cannot be objective simply because I don't use Vimeo myself. So therefore, the perception is that YouTube is just much better medium than that. Now, Kim sent just go to podtv.tv. Okay, I did write that. And I went to, for example, one of the shows that I'm familiar with. One of them is, let me get there. I think it's a Wall Street Hackers. Okay, that's a financial show, I believe. So I wanted to see how I can use it, and let's see. I was trying to find the latest show. What the hell? How you do it? Because essentially, okay, it gives me several this type of shows. How does it say name? Starting from
Sasha, that's what I meant when I said the showcase.
7 of June. Okay, the first one is 7 of June. The next one is 15 of June. There are several others, and the latest one is, I believe it's the 2nd of December of this year. Okay, and this every Thursday. So there are no shows of no December shows except the 2nd of December. Okay, and they're not in chronological order. They're not in any order, and furthermore, all the recent shows as of December, you can't even find it because they're not there. So how useful is this?
You're talking about podtv.tv.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, it's since it's a website, it has some limitations. One problem is that podtv.tv live only can show one show. As Roku, we have 3 channels on television, but we only have one stream through podtv.tv. So podtv.tv has
but I'm talking about only recorded shows previously. I'm not talking about live anything like that.
I have to talk to Kim about that. We're meeting next week on issues for 2024. The issues that we see are what you're bringing up. Thank you, Sasha, because we'll address that. Also, storage issues.
Yeah.
We've got to solve that because we have more content than we have storage capacity. And it creates real problems for us because the only thing we can do is delete shows. And the real problem deleting it is like Jim's show. We don't want to delete it because his show is evergreen. Has changed my mind. I can use next year. I took some of the Lawyer's Den, repurposed it, put it back on. I got 10,000 viewers immediately. And it was produced 2 years ago. When you have evergreen shows, you can actually use them over and over again in different formats. So his show is evergreen, clean and evergreen shows we can use over and over again. World Edition, which has a good followership, problem is it's dead data. It's dead by tomorrow. So what I try to do with World Edition is pump it 4 or 5 times with different channels. In other words, re-show it 4 or 5 times that day through different channels, knowing by tomorrow it'll be deleted. So World Edition is a lot tougher to work with. But the surprising thing is, like your investment show, Sasha, people watch it a year later. And I just go, you got to be kidding me. In other words, you're showing.
Speaking about my investment show, I feel it is a great failure because what I'm doing is I've generated for the last year a profit of 285%. This is an unheard of number. There is no Wall Street professionals that can touch me. And yet no one, even Jim, sorry to say anything about you and Milan, nobody is interested to even understand and learn what I'm doing. you sort of you give in a nod. Oh, okay. Milan says that I'm wizard and all that stuff, but he's not interested at all. What trace I did last week?
But
Tell
Santi,
me
you
the
changed
trade.
my mind about this derivative trading. You did change my mind.
That's your next program. You change your mind.
Mhm.
First of all, what I'm saying is forget about Warren Buffett. Forget about all the
You
recommendations.
changed my mind about that.
Yeah.
The sad part
Okay,
about
so it's not
modeling-
100% failure. It's
By the way, really quickly, Nick, I know you're winding down and everything. The only thing I was going to just mention is the only show that we didn't shout out, and I got to give him a shout out because he will be coming back in 2024 after taking a hiatus and everything. So for those that are interested in learning about the gaming industry, Jatobi will be making a return of the Gamers Den, which has been on hiatus. So we'll be seeing the Gamers Den come back, I think, in January if all is correct and everything. But if Jatobi
Shout
is
out
going
to
to give a
Jacoby.
quick shout out to the Gamers Den and us learning about the video game industry, because that will be making a return trip.
Right. And with that, we're going to end the media show, and we will see you next time, which will probably be next year on the media show, because we're taking a break, which means you're going to get reruns on this show, but not on some of the other shows.
No hate speech.
No hate speech.
No hate speech.
Okay. We'll see you next time on media show.
Bye-bye.
So we got to go. Bye-bye.